the next thing I'd like to do is introduce to you Monica Mullen. She is a wonderful friend of mine who is training to be an end-of-life doula. And she and I have been sharing our backgrounds and experiences, and it's a perfect blend and balance partnership, we feel. And we really wanted to cover these topics together today. And we're really excited to bring this conversation to you. And clearly, with the wonderful showing that we have with the event and with the number of participants, it's clearly a topic that we can all benefit from and things that we want to share. So there'll be an opportunity for questions periodically through the next hour and a half, but also a place at the end. We hope that we've spared some time so that we can actually ask for a couple of stories as well. But just want you to know that we'll be full of information, and we're recording for being able to make it accessible to others who couldn't be with us today. And so without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Monica and let her introduce herself to you.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Such an honor to be with you all today. And I acknowledge all of y'all for coming. Like Karen said at the beginning, it's oftentimes a subject that people would rather not engage in or talk about. So I applaud your courage and willingness. So as Karen said, I'm in training to be a care doula. And I want to just give you a little scenario that I want you to think about. And so I want you to imagine that you are facing the dying of someone you cherish. And who would that be? And imagine that you are getting some support, but really not all the support that you need. And imagine that if you had somebody who could really listen to the depth of your despair and overwhelm. Imagine that you have all the things that need to get done, all the details that need to be handled, and you just can't get to it all. Imagine if you had somebody who could help you get things done, somebody who has your back, holding sacred space, and that is a care doula in a nutshell. So what we are is we are non-medical support for people from the beginning of a serious illness diagnosis, but not with the prognosis of death. So anything from the beginning of a serious illness all the way through, if it happens, anywhere along the whole pathway to the last days of life. And we come in as a support system. And we do that offering emotional support, practical support. And by practical, I mean running errands, cleaning up the house, making phone calls, and providing resources within the community to assist people for all the myriad of things that need to be handled. And what we do, especially towards the end of life, now people can have hospice care up to 6 months prior to death. Now they have to have a terminal prognosis. And care doulas can come in, and what we do is we are under hospice. Well, hospice is that is the main beautiful service that's available here in America. We are very, very fortunate to have this. It is unfortunate that many people have the idea that when they hear the word hospice, they think death immediately. And sometimes people don't ever get hospice care, or they only get it for the last couple of days of their life. And it really is an incredible service to make that time of life very comfortable. And they do provide incredible support. Now, what a care doula does that's different is that we have more time, that we can be there for emotional support, spiritual support, and like I said, also practical. So anyway, that's a care doula in a nutshell. And I started my journey. I think the seeds were sown for me to follow this calling back when my mom was in hospice for 2 weeks. And that experience was, I just felt like they were angels. They were angels sent from heaven. It was the most beautiful, beautiful support that I'd ever witnessed. And so through the years, I've had the opportunity to work with people through serious illness and their last moments of the life in their dying process. And each time that hospice was brought in, even if it was like at the very end, I always had this thought like, why is it that we have to wait till the end of our lives to get this incredible compassionate care with such attention? And I got the answer. And so for me, the answer is becoming a doula. So that's where I'm at with it. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. You made a great entree into what it is that I would like to bring up too, is to speak more about hospice and its importance. But first, I just want to say that my own connection to hospice was actually kind of a backdoor thing. Originally, my father died of cancer in 1976 here in Houston. And my mother attended to him in the home for the entire, I'd say, 2-year period that he underwent treatment, and then that he was really not responding to treatment and was basically terminal. And it was just palliative care, which was just in its infancy at that time. And he really did not get medicated for pain the way I believe he should have. And there was just a lot of things that medical field was still grappling with end of life. And hospice didn't exist yet. But we did have visiting nurses who came from a local visiting nurse association, who came and supported and helped and taught her the skills she needed to give him shots, to work with a feeding tube, to work with his trach, to give, all of the treatments actually that he needed in the home, in between their once or twice a week visit. And they were instrumental in helping her handle it, but it was an immense and incredible challenge and load for the family, naturally, in this walk to the end. And as it turned out, my mother, after my father died, needed a job, and she got a job at the Visiting Nurse Association working as a field secretary, and slowly throughout the next 20 years worked her way up to becoming executive secretary to the CEO of the Visiting Nurse Association, during which time they created and launched some hospice care as well. So my mother got to be a witness and a support to hospice and its development in the 80s and early 90s. And so hospice became my awareness as well. After I left, Unity of Houston's my home church, after I became a minister and served here at the church for 7 years, I stepped away for a bit to put my attention on my children who were in middle school and high school. It felt like a time they needed me a little bit more, my attention. And I had the privilege of being a hospice chaplain with a local hospice for a year. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. I never felt more useful. And I saw exactly what Monica saw. Incredibly gifted hearts and minds, experience and hands to support bodies that were needing touch, needing medication, needing lotion, needing bathing, needing care, and the support to the families and support in just the psychological, emotional, spiritual process of moving to the end of life. I never felt, it was just an amazing experience. And I just want to say, people think hospice is a death sentence in itself and people push it away. But the truth is, the sooner you can qualify for hospice, if in your family or in your relationship, or if you have a friend who's wondering if it's time for that, if you are at the end of the medical treatment for care, and you really have to just accept that this might be the mechanism that will carry you out or your loved one out of this life, if that's what is happening, this is the right time to get a doctor's order is really all it takes. Medicare, whether you qualify for Medicare, whether the patient is old enough for Medicare, this is a Medicare benefit, and it would kick in and it pays for the whole thing. And all hospices are just accepting that Medicare benefit, and they all are required by law to bring the same level and the same services to bear, to support the family, to support the person, to integrate the care with the hospice care team. So just want to kind of give you a sense of the importance of that. It's probably the single most amazing benefit our healthcare system gives us here in the United States, is the access to hospice care and end of life care. So if you've ever experienced it, I know you'll speak about it here, but just want you to know that it is for you. And I often say with my full heart, may we all have the privilege of dying in hospice. That's what I would say, because it's such a benefit to the family as well as to the person themselves. So I felt so blessed to have been a part of a hospice team for a year before I went on to New Braunfels and was a minister there for 13 years before returning here in 2017. So that's my experience with hospice in particular, and just kind of wanted to open with that idea. If you have other questions about hospice or have some experiences of hospice, there'll be opportunities throughout the remainder of this program today to add that. Mostly we wanted to introduce these topics so that you understood what it was to be a care doula, and also that hospice care and what it is, how it's available for you, and any other questions that you might have. But now we wanted to kind of turn toward the circumstances that arise in our lives and start with a common experience. I think some point in your life, surely you have been kind of called upon to support a friend who has received a challenging diagnosis or a terminal diagnosis, and how it changes or impacts your relationship with them, and how to kind of process that for yourself in knowing how to be with it. Because when we have a friendship on a partner level or on a par, it's give and take. I need something from you, you need something from me. We run around, we fall on each other's shoulder whenever we need it, or we're there for each other when we need it. And then when something like this happens, where this is an end of life thing, it stops us in our tracks, and it's like we have to reevaluate on the fly. What does this mean to me? What can I do now? How now do I support? Can I tell them my problems still? Is that over with now? Now I have to find it someplace else, and this person now is the one who needs all my attention. And just those kinds of concerns and questions about how to be with them. Sometimes we compensate by staying away. We don't know what to do, so we just don't. We might make one phone call or drop a card, or make a outreach and send a message. But then how do we follow up? We don't want to bother them. We don't know if they're in pain. We don't know how the treatments are going with them, if they're undergoing treatment. There's a desire to be there, and you really just need to kind of ask yourself, what is it that I need in this relationship now? and just kind of step back and think about it. Can I get some of my needs met somewhere else? How can I step up and be a different kind of friend to this friend? Is that the nature of our relationship? Am I that close? Do I want to be? You have to just really be honest with yourself and determine where you fall in that continuum of how do I respond at this particular time. Knowing that visits are also kind of tricky. When we offer to visit, it's really key to be sensitive to what's going on in the room. What is their energy level like? What's going on with them? Are they going about a lot of routine business? Does it really look pretty much the same as when you've come to visit them before? Or does it start to look more and more like someone's sick here and there's more and more being attended to? And let them talk and let them tell you and take your cues from them. And don't overstay, to bring somebody, even a friend, even a trusted, loved friend into the situation is taxing for someone who's ill or recovering from treatment or trying to integrate new medications or recover from surgeries and all of those kinds of things that could be going on in their life. It's difficult, and just being attuned to what it is that they need and make the visit short and be messages directed to that you're thinking about them, that you love them, that you miss them, that you hope things are going well. Maybe, is there something I could bring? Think of something you would like if you were in that situation. You just need to maybe step out for a bit and consider what is the new normal for this relationship, and how can you be in it, and how much do you want to be in it as well. So I kind of opened that up just a little bit. And Monica, I know you probably got some things to say, because this is what care doulas actually offer, isn't it? This sort of advice, but also this example.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. And just like Karen was saying, the whole thing about reading the energy of the room when you walk in, that is huge. And really reading the energy of the person. I have seen many circumstances where there was somebody on their deathbed and people would come in and just be la 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 la. They want to share everything they're doing in their lives and all this kind of stuff, and such disturbance to the space. And yes, when somebody is very ill, if you've had the experience when you've been really, really sick, and like people come around to visit, if you've ever been in the hospital, for example, and they come to visit, it's a little tiring, depending on how all that goes. And like Karen said, short visits are very effective. The other thing is, I would keep my attention on the person and ask if they are in the place where they want to communicate and they want to say something, to ask open-ended questions. Like they may say, I'm feeling weak. And you could say, weak. I hear that. And pause. One of the things really is giving long pauses. And then you might say, is there something, would you like to tell me more about that? Pause, stop. Let them respond. And so we really, we take down the level of our speed and match their energy and put all of our attention on them. We're not trying to fix anything. We're not trying to give advice, nothing, not at all, unless they ask, right? So it's really a different way of communicating, and just really being still, holding a quiet space with all of your attention on them. And Karen, I think at one point you talked about well, maybe you're going to talk about this in the next segment, but that telepathy kind of communication, especially for somebody who is in the dying days. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, what I will talk about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm
Okay.
going to switch it back to you though, and ask
Okay.
you to share a story about the acquaintance, because a lot of times when we first hear about that, this kind of devastating thing happening to someone that we know, and as I was saying, is we have to kind of evaluate how close are you, what is it, what does this person mean in your life, all of those questions. But it often just repels us because we don't know what to do. We don't do anything and we kind of freeze and we just disappear. And a lot of people will just disappear and not know what to do, be afraid to come, a number of things. But that is a loss that the person who's undergoing that also experiences, that people just stay away from them, while they're going through this. And that I know has an impact as well. And the reason I'm mentioning you, Monica, is that you told me a great story
Yes.
about someone that you had gotten that news for, and you had a reaction that I thought was really telling.
Okay. Yeah. So a friend of mine had called me, and I had been in touch with this friend, and knowing that her friend, who is more of an acquaintance to me over time, um, she was in and out of hospital, then back to rehab, then back to hospital, back to rehab, and back to hospital. Though, when that kind of thing is going on, it's typically not a positive sign. So she also had shared that not many people at all were going to visit her in the hospital. And so I said, okay, I will, I'm comfortable going. Um, and like I said, we were acquaintances. So it wasn't like I had a deep friendship with her. And I asked my friend, I said, get permission. Ask her if she would like for me to come. So that's one thing. I wanted to have that permission. And so I did. She said yes, and I did go visit. And the visit was short. There wasn't a lot, again, not to do, not to say, just presence. And as a result, how I see it is that after that, she got a lot of visitors. People started showing up. Now, I think there is something in the world of energy, this thing about like opening up the space or opening up the door for others to come in. Nothing was said, spoken or anything else. I'm just talking on an energy level that sometimes but I felt a calling to go. I felt very comfortable in going. And and sometimes that can open the space for other people to come in, which did happen. So we all know, like deep in our hearts, if it's like, is it something you want to do? And if it's one of those things where you just keep thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, sometimes even that is a cue for me. And you know how it is, it's like it won't leave you alone. Sometimes that's also my cue. It's like, yeah, take action on that. But deep down in our hearts, we do know, that we'll just still ourselves, get quiet, and take the guidance.
Right. Right. Thank you, Monica. The other thing too is that as you feel, and process what the end of this person's life may mean to you, and you can feel it in your heart more, it may become important for you to be able to say that to them or to communicate it. Maybe it's written, maybe you send them a card or a note, maybe a recording of some kind, but it really might need to be in person. And so making those arrangements to visit when you're guided. One thing I've learned as a minister is that I never know when the right time is to go and visit somebody, or and trying to juggle the all the demands that I have, or the administrative stuff I'm doing, and all kinds of other things in my life, and trying to think, how can I get over there? And I keep wanting to go. Tuesday seems like the right day, or Thursday seems like the right day, and I just try to make it, happen, and then something falls, and I feel like I've let them down, even if I haven't told them, when I'm coming. And then I find that when actually things come together at the time, and I get the call, or I get another message that somebody is kind of close, I realize this was the time all along. Do you know what I mean? That I thought I had to fit it into a schedule, or I had to find a place for it. But in fact, there is a right time. And sometimes your own guidance, your instincts will be right. So suddenly they come to your mind, and they weigh on your heart, and you realize, I have got to go. I think I need to go and say something that I want them to know from my heart about what a difference their life has made in mine. And you just might have to schedule that, find a way to do that. But if you're struggling with it, trust that the time will be right. And try to also have the courage to act on your intuition as well, to manage that. So what I'd like to do now is kind of open up for a few questions. If you've got questions about hospice, about care doula, or just about this situation with a peer, with someone important in your life that you've just learned is ill, dying, close to dying, taking that step, taking those last steps, I should say, and how to respond to them. Would love to hear your questions at this time.
And if you could go to your reactions and raise your hand, that puts you at the top of the screen for us to notice you have a question. Dave and Teresa.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hey, Karen. Yeah, my first question that comes to my mind is, you know that Teresa and I both lost her parents and my dad, and my mom's coming up on this process. And both my dad and currently my mom have real barriers up against any kind of spiritual conversation. And I'm not sure why, and I don't want to get into that part necessarily, but it seems like it has a lot. Well, I know it has a potential to interfere with having caregiving conversations, because that's where I'm coming from. And my mom just, she don't want to have anything to do with that conversation.
Mm. So would it be helpful for you to say that, Mom, I'm thinking about those things, and I just want to know what would make you comfortable? And so you need, just from your need, Dave, just tell her from your need, you realize this is difficult for her, but you need guidance from her on some particulars, or what she absolutely wants or what she absolutely doesn't want, so that you can make the best decisions you can. That might be a way to help her help you, if she thinks that it's your need. It's not, you're not asking her what she needs. Is that, sometimes people react better, especially parent-child, that somehow, if I'm helping my son, it's better than trying to just help myself,
And she has a lot to say about, she doesn't want to be a burden, and she doesn't want to give this information out. You guys you just take care of it, kind of thing.
Well, in that case, then you do that. Then you also, maybe you have enough information. You know who she is, and you know what you would want if you were in her situation. And that's maybe a sufficient guide until she clearly tells you no. You're just going to have to, she's never done this either. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
It's not like she knows how this is supposed to go, Thanks. Any other questions around caregiving, not caregiving exactly, but how to navigate this part of a relationship? If you think of some things, they may come up in the next segment. We're planning to talk now about the actual act of caregiving. And that is something that I think I'd say most of us either are experiencing or will experience at some time in the remainder of our lives, where we're giving care to someone who is walking to the end of their life, or someone who's near to us, and kind of how is it that we balance? How do we get respite care? Respite is getting time away where we can just relax, go to a movie, if we still go to movies, I don't know, but you get what go for a walk in the park, go take care of errands. I know people who just can't get to the grocery store because they just can't spare enough time in between medication doses or something, and they need somebody to be there to do one thing for their loved one while they get a chance to get away. So caregiving someone who's dying is a 24/7 situation. In my own case, I was the main, caregiver is a little bit too intimate for the role that I actually had. I was like I was in charge of my mother's care. That's the way I would say it. I was nearby. I kept her near my home, near where I was, so that I could care for her, made all the decisions, showed up with the tissue boxes that she wanted, these tissues, not the ones that the place where she was staying, what they provided. She didn't like those. She liked puffs. So I had to go and make sure she had puffs, and bring her peanut butter crackers because she liked to have snacks on those, and she ate those to her detriment at times. But I had to, it was that, or she fell and she was in the emergency room. The phone call could be anything from, she needs more tissues to, she's bleeding and we're not really sure where it's coming from. It could just be like anything. And so living like that while you're also trying to manage a full-time job in your life and go about the other things that were already keeping you busy in your life is just, it's a bigger burden and responsibility and a great privilege at the same time. And I was aware to a great degree of the magnitude of both of those things, that it was a great privilege and it was the most difficult thing I have ever done in my life, and trying to manage it the whole time. So the caregiving and being the person in charge, not only that, but people who actually bring a family member or a friend into their home and care for them themselves directly, it can be just exhausting, and it's difficult to always get the kind of respite care that I was describing that's really necessary. But that's where being a friend to a friend who's doing that might actually be a role that you can play, where you can normalize. It may not be that you're connected to the person who they're caring for, but you're there to support your friend, and you can offer some off time so she can or he can run and take care of other kinds of business while a family, while that care is still needed and still going on. When you're caring for someone, it's important to have a medical advisor. If hospice is not part of the plan at the particular time, having a medical advisor, someone who is medically savvy, who's a professional, having hospice care staff are such a support to somebody who's giving care in the home. or care doula, as we were, as we were hearing from Monica, to lean on for advising and educating about the dying process itself. If someone is moving toward, death, they will start to show signs and symptoms in a way over a long period of time, long before they actually pass. They'll already start to be in decline. And these care doulas, as well as hospice staff, are trained to look for those signs and to make the family and the caregivers aware of that, so that our expectations of what they should be doing, what they might need, that must mean this, and things that we've responded to in the past really don't work anymore, because there's something different happening now, and there's a different way to support. And it also relieves us if we know that's what it is. It sounds like it would just make you sad, you'd be crying all the time, but the truth is, it actually relieves you as a caregiver to realize, oh, that's what that is. Okay, so you get ready for incrementally, for the inevitability that you're headed toward, of letting go of this person, but you're doing it in small little increments every step of the way. And it's strangely comforting in a way, and relieving. And then every now and then, of course, you have your tears and you have your feelings, but it's far more helpful to have that kind of information and to know that. So if you're in a caregiving experience, or if you've known somebody that has, they'll have been usually cued to those kinds of things too, and can help you with it. I will address the telepathy thing that Monica was talking about. My grandmother was at the end of her life. She was 90, she was turning 99. She was 98 when I saw her last. And I had decided to become a Unity minister. So I knew that, but I was surrounded, her hospital bed was surrounded by people who were Catholic, the same as I was, by all of my cousins and uncles and aunts, and people were all around her bed. And I wanted to say goodbye to her, and I wanted to tell her that I was planning to go to ministerial school. And I did not want to say it out loud in front of all these people. I just didn't want to have that conversation with them. I didn't know what they would say. I wasn't around them very much, but I really felt like it was going to be a weird thing to drop on them at this particular time. My grandmother was lucid. She was kind of going in and out. She was very attuned to the children around her, and kind of ignoring us adults who were hanging over her bed, talking to her. She would look at us and she'd smile, and then she'd see a child and she would watch a child, come in the room. So she was kind of distracted, and she was in another zone. I think even once or twice she even said out loud, one of her sisters, she was a younger sister in her family, but one of her older sisters who had died, she called out her name. And I didn't know if she was mistaking someone at the bedside for her sister, or if she actually saw her dead sister. I'd say right now, with my understanding, probably all of the above. It could have been both of those things, that she was just kind of in a different zone, right? And I decided that I still wanted to tell her about what I was going to do, because I thought she would be supportive. And so I decided just to do it telepathically. Now, no one ever told me to do this. I had no experience with this. I just desperately wanted her to know. And I knew this was my last chance to do it, but I did not want to say it out loud. So I just did that. I just looked at her, the side of her face, whatever she was doing, and I communed with the person that I knew her to be. And I communed in my heart and told her what it was that I was planning to do, because I think in some way I wanted her blessing. And I told her nothing happened. And when I got ready to leave, I gathered I had a 1-year-old daughter who kept trying to climb in the hospital bed with her. And I, just bundled everything up and told her I loved her. I knew this would probably be the last time, but I didn't want to say that out loud either. So I just said, I love you, Grandma. I hope you feel better. I miss seeing you. I love you. Take good care of yourself. And she turned and looked at me, and she took my hand and she looked me in the eyes and she said, good luck to you. And my grandmother, that wasn't unusual for her to say. She would say that to somebody that she was saying goodbye to. That's a goodbye in her mind too. Wasn't the only way she said it, but I took it as a blessing for me. And I later learned that through a psychic and through some other information I've shared in one of these Zoom events this year, that she and I actually have a soul connection to do ministry together. And so my grandmother actually transitioned before I went to ministerial school and was with me during ministerial school. And I feel that the power of my ministry is magnified by her soul that works with me in doing the work that I do. So I fulfill her soul and mine, and we share with the world together in this kind of a way. So I didn't know that at the time, but I offer this story to you as an idea that sometimes when a person can't communicate, or you think you can't communicate with them, that they can't hear you or that they're far away, you can always telepathically use your heart to just say whatever it is, just turn to them and draw an image of who they really are to you and speak to them exactly the way you would if just tell them your truth and trust. It will register with them because you are connected always. So this is caregiving with someone that you're walking through, or caregiving to someone who's dying, or someone who may be just in their declining years. So questions around that, things that you might be needing, might need more information about. We'd love to hear your questions, or maybe a short story. Anyone?
Dave and Teresa, they've got their hand raised.
Yeah, hey, again, same person. The role of the mental decline being greater than the physical decline, where you're not sure how much cognitive is there and so forth. How much of this depends on a cognitive ability, do you believe?
To cognitive ability to do what now?
To be able to connect with the person. I mean, it seems to interfere a lot with the ability to connect sometimes with them.
Okay, so I also, as a hospice chaplain, some of my clients were dementia patients, and they were all over the map on how much ability they had to connect or to relate or to communicate. But they often got to the place where they were mute or unable to communicate. And certainly they didn't know me and showed no response. Sometimes they didn't even look at me when I was talking with them. Sometimes they were in almost a comatose state. They would be all different kinds of things. But what I always knew, and I firmly believe, is that they are present. As long as they're breathing air, They are present. And I began to develop, this is just, really take this with a grain of salt, y'all. This is not anything I've read anywhere. But I truly believe that the entire person, the person that we have known, exists on the other side of this baffle of, we already know that there's proteins, science tells us there's proteins in the brain that start to interfere with the connections and the thoughts and the understanding, and break down the communication and break down the neural pathways really in the brain as dementia continues. And so what I think of it as is like a growing baffle that a person is trying to see and experience the world through, and that it just continues to get more and more occluded, so that what gets through is just pieces that don't make sense. Like the brain can't make sense of it anymore. And it's like, if we think they're gibberish, they think we are too, however we're doing is just making no sense to them. And so they just turn away. At some point, they just stop interacting, because it's like a TV with a static all over it. You might, after a while, you're just not even going to watch it anymore, right? You just turn around and you look at something else, you just kind of go and do something different. That's how it felt like it happens. Not always, and it's not in every situation, but I do want you to know that the person is still there. So whatever it is you need to say to them, you can say it out loud in your way and say it to them, and trust that whatever vibration, maybe it's the words, maybe it's your heart energy, maybe it's the presence of you in the room, whatever it is, your intention to reach out to them and to express your love and your care is hitting, is landing, is communicating in a way that they can experience. And at a minimum, their souls definitely do. So it is never wasted to reach out to and say the words that you need to say, want to say. Communicate any way you can. And if you want to try telepathically, it's a clear way to do it. It's very straightforward. It goes underneath all the baffles of any kind of clinical illness or disease or brain. We're not even talking about their brain. We're going straight to the heart. We're going straight to the soul. We're going straight to the energy of our relationship and the connectedness of our lives. That's where you're now communicating. And you know what? We could do that right now. You can do that with everybody in your life right now. You are connected to everyone that you care about and who knows you. And you're connected to people you haven't met yet, but that's a different story. That's another Zoom event some other time. But right now you can just know that the people that matter and the things you need to say are landing, even if there's not cognition involved. Susie, are you next?
Yes, she is. If I could find my unmute button. Kind of stepping it back into the caretaker role of, I would have given anything to have had a care doula for the 5 years that we transitioned from a lively human being into final having to turn off the machines.
Right.
That was one of the things that I felt very unsupported through that whole entire thing, other than with my family. And I think one of the things that people don't understand is how isolated a caregiver feels. And because you don't have time to talk to your friends, and your world becomes extremely small. And I was running a business while taking care of Stan for 5 years, and my world became extremely small. And that's why after he transitioned, I came to the church and said, we've got pastoral care, but we need something to support the caregivers at the same time. And that program grew out of that. But I'd have loved to have had a Monica Mullen in my life for those 5 years, because
Right.
there was, after the transplant, it was 24/7 care. And I remember when somebody finally came and I was able to go to church by myself, I was like, oh, I get away from the house for 2.5 hours. You know, it was great.
Right.
And that's when you were talking, it was like, yeah, that's where it hit me.
Right.
So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Oh, thank you so much for saying it and being a witness to, you know, where the real need is, you know, and what we really can do, what we can offer is to be a support to the one who's giving support, and not be intimidated. You know, that there are small little things one can do for an hour or 2 hours to give somebody immeasurable gift, an immeasurable gift, to be able to leave and either take care of business or just breathe different air, just get out in the sunshine or the rain if necessary, into a car, drive somewhere. Which way do you run first? I mean, seriously, it's all consuming, and it's such a gift. That's a way that we can really love our friends who are going through that. Becky Hari, how are you?
Fine. I wanted to support what you said, Karen, about people being aware. I've worked in nursing homes where, and it was pre people going to hospice, but some of them I suggested to the nurses it was time for hospice, and then they would get into hospice. But one particular lady I saw had no family and was out of it mentally. And she was referred to me because her roommate's daughter, she began to recognize her, and the roommate's daughter thought that there was a spark of light in her and it would help her to see somebody. So as a psychologist, I went in to see her, and she would ramble about family members going up the hill and this and that, and I would listen and smile, and sometimes I'd redirect her back and ask her how she liked her eggs. And I took her out in a wheelchair. She was in a wheelchair, so I took her out on a sunny day, and we looked at the sun and sky, and I just talked to her about the sun and sky, and she was just kind of quiet then, and what a nice day it was. I just connected with her, and she seemed to like it. But the most response she would have is she'd look down at her eggs. She was glad I was there. I just sensed that, but she would look down at her eggs, or she would enjoy being outdoors. She'd look forward to going out, but she never strung a sentence together with me, ever. And I saw her for a while, and then it was time for her to go into hospice. And I went in and said, this will be the last time I see you. You're going into hospice. You're going to the next step. And, you're going to have lots of care. And I just talked to her, and she looked at me straight in the face and said, I want you to know I appreciate everything you've done for me. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was so surprised. And I told her I enjoyed being with her, and I enjoyed doing it. And that was the first full sentence she'd ever made. So yeah, they're there. They're really there.
Oh, that is a beautiful story, Becky. And it says a lot to the generosity of your heart. And just like you said, following your instincts about what would you want if you were in her situation? I mean, sometimes that is sufficient. You know, we put ourselves there, then that's an act of compassion. Compassion is recognizing how would I feel if I were that, if I were there. And we can do that with caregivers as well as the person that is needing the care when we're not sure. We don't let our uncertainty or our need to do it perfectly, like there's a perfectly right answer. There's a myriad of answers. There are a myriad of things we could do. And really finding the right one at the right time is something that we are actually attuned to. in our hearts. And that's a beautiful story, Becky. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. Judy, good to see you.
Hi, thanks. It's wonderful to be here. I want to respond to that story because I think there's a world of volunteer opportunity out there for any compassionate person that wants to get involved. I mean, that's beautiful. And I haven't experience with visiting in nursing homes, and just the ability to get someone outside is a challenge. So you gave such a gift, and I think, you know, if we can find ways to get people engaged in that and know how, from a story, telling a story like that, how much it means. I mean, the sky's the limit to what we can do to help each other. I have a question for a friend. Her father was in the hospital, and he was diagnosed with a huge tumor on his lungs. So he got radiation and was at home and had a visiting nurse. The visiting nurse seemed to be trying to sell hospice before they had all the test results of this therapy, and almost was trying to tell the daughter not to be there while she talked to him. And my experience in the nursing home with the person I loved was that there was a whole team meeting explaining all the test results and why hospice was needed. And this seemed a little bit strange and not to be expected. So I wondered what one would do about that, or any information you have about that experience.
Judy, thank you for saying that. Yes. Hospice, I have known hospices to be sort of competitive, certainly in some locales in particular. And yeah, because they are trying to get as many clients as they can serve, because they get, like I said, that Medicare benefit will come. They are required to give the same scope of services and the same support and there's really not anything extra that they offer. They can't say, well, for just the low price of this X amount of dollars, we could also do this for you. No, they have to provide the full scope of hospice care as dictated in order to qualify for that Medicare benefit. So basically, it's the same program, just being delivered through different caregivers or different agencies, I'd say. And so they're in competition with each other. And it really should be managed at the healthcare facility that is treating patients, that hospice is handled very, I don't know, what word I would use. Ethically is the word that comes to my mind. In an ethical way, that it isn't putting undue pressure on a family member to either choose one or to choose this one over that one. I mean, it really must be a carefully considered choice on their part. And it's really about when the person is ready for hospice. And it comes to the decision, are you going to pursue medical care? I mean, healing. I mean, are you still trying to go for cure? If you're still trying to go for cure, you're not ready for hospice, no matter how depleted or how much decline there is. And so the person and the family member has to do that. And in your case, you're saying they had, the results weren't even in. So
no, and it turned out that the tumor had shrunk to a speck. But the thing they were telling, he has COPD and he was at home with a lot of oxygen, which, could be grounds enough for hospice anyway.
yeah.
But the point was that they were saying that then that would mean no more care, although they could opt out of hospice again if they wanted the care. But
that's right.
That was what was, here they didn't have the results, and here it was just a speck.
Yeah.
And the woman was selling it. So I think my friend's going to write a letter to somebody to process that experience, because that doesn't sound like what one would want. And she had the impression that they were trying to sell something.
Right.
And
yeah, that can happen. I mean, I can certainly see how that can happen. And so the healthcare facility that they were receiving the care, you want to go send that to the CEO. The CEO and the patient, usually there's a patient advocate,
Yeah.
system in that the facility. Be sure and certainly let them know how unethical, that felt. And it wasn't even the right thing at the right time. It was very confusing and distressing for the family.
Right. Okay. I will reassure her of that because she her heart was hurting enough with what she was going through
Right.
without that. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Sure.
Karen, I would like to add just a quick resource for people
Yay.
on this subject. You can go to the NHPCO website, and that is the National Hospice Palliative Care Organization. Now, there is a distinction between palliative care and hospice. Hospice can they can only come in if a doctor has given them a terminal illness. Palliative care, they can receive that when they've gotten a serious diagnosis, but not necessarily terminal. So I can put that in the chat. It's a great resource.
Yes.
What did I say? NHPCO.
Mhm. Thank you. That's really good to know. And Dave and Teresa?
Hi. Yeah, that brought up some questions for myself because our experience with hospice care for my mother was very different from hospice care for my dad, and they were only separated by 7 months in their passing over. My mother's care, she was diagnosed with bone cancer that had metastasized from her lungs and given 2 months to live. And that was pretty much how long she lived after that diagnosis. So we were doing full-time care on our own with her. And then we got, maybe it was palliative, but I mean, it was terminal. So I don't understand why it was so different. Hers was minimal. We had a nurse come in. The nurse would just come in once a week to check on her and basically just stay there for half an hour. And that was it. It was on my sisters and I for the rest of the time. And when my dad was, he had declined, he had Alzheimer's and he was having swallowing problems and basically starving to death. And he was placed after the last visit to the hospital where he just couldn't eat. They put him on full hospice care and they were there 24/7. So it was a different company. And I guess there's a difference between how much one company will do versus the other, but I was alarmed and really dismayed by the comparison. So if you have any comments, I would appreciate that understanding.
Thank you for mentioning that. I'm, now that we've talked about the competitiveness and the fact that they're actually really supposed to be giving the full scope of hospice support and care to the family as well as to the person, that that really the way that you can make your choices is to go with, meet with them, make your choices and see, who has the highest rating by people who have used them, and see what the comments are of people who have used this particular hospice over another hospice, if you can. You know how you can you do that for restaurants, we do that for all kinds of services and features. Do that for your hospice as well. And really read about it and see what are the positive things they're saying? What are the complaints that they're making? Where are your personal values? What is it that your family is going to need from hospice? And make sure that what you're reading and hearing about is really meeting your values and your priorities. Go and meet them and meet some of the people on the team of the hospice while you're making a choice. They should really be able to give you, open their door, that you should begin to feel what it feels like to be in the company of these people, even before you bring them into your home. You need to see that the philosophy is there, that the communication is there. If it's really businesslike, if it's really quick, if it's pressured, I would step away and keep looking for someone who gives you the sense of care. That's what you want. You want to walk into it. You should feel that way from top to bottom. If you don't, then something is not being communicated all the way down. It's not a consistent message. It doesn't mean that there may not be really wonderful nurse aides or really wonderful nurses or social workers who are in care, but it could mean that the philosophy of the organization is driving them in a way just to cover the bases or try to cover client base. So it's like anything else, they're just trying to meet the financial needs and the needs of the company at times, but it should really be care driven. And there are organizations that will do that. So you look until you find one. And thank you for sharing your two experiences, Teresa. That's useful. Patty.
I was just going to let y'all know I work in hospice, and all hospice and palliative cares are nationally ranked through a CHAP survey and a CMNS survey that is accessible. If you just Google those things, you can get a national ranking, because we're all ranked nationally according to surveys that a third party sends out, that we know hospice has the capability of changing those scores. They're sent out by Medicare driven and the National Hospice Association. So there's scores that you can read and check your hospice companies.
Right. So would you put that into the chat? So like the link, if somebody wanted to just
Yes, I will.
click on it, that would be so helpful, Patty. Thank you so much. Caitlin. Do you have a question?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Good to see you. It's been so long. Yes, I have a question. So I've been personally really drawn to this, the whole concept, the work of hospice for since I first experienced it about 10 years ago with a family friend and then my grandmother. And I mean, really just opened my eyes to how beautiful the dying experience can be. And broadly in our culture, we want to pretend it's not a thing. And so I've read, just a little bit about it. I was wondering if you could make any recommendations for books to read about this. I've also looked into becoming an end-of-life doula someday. I'm super busy now, little kids and my work, but that actually had called to me before you announced this today. So I'd love to hear about that as a career, I guess. And then, or I guess more immediately, what are the volunteer opportunities that you know of for people to get involved? Again, it's not something I know I can dedicate a lot of time to, but if there's a once a month that I could go into hospice, I think that would be awesome.
Oh, Caitlin, this is wonderful. Before I hand everything else you just asked over to Monica, because this is all right up her alley, I want to just say quickly, in answer to your volunteer question, all hospices have volunteers, and the volunteers will often be the ones to come and visit the client as well as the family member, but really the client, and just to give them a little social outlet and a little visitor that they may or may not often have, and also the potential for some respite care for the caregiver. Like they can sit with them for an hour by arrangement and give the person some time to go. So it is a very, very beneficial thing. If anyone who was on this call would like to be able to do that, you can volunteer at any hospice. They're always looking for volunteers. So that's a great place to do it. Now, Monica, answer everything else that she said.
All right. So I'll talk about the Hospice Volunteer. I'm currently on a wait list at the Houston Hospice. And because of COVID, they're not offering their trainings right now. They've got one scheduled for January. And I think, I can't speak for all hospices, but at least in Houston, I think the hospice places do offer trainings. Like that's really a part
Yes.
of it.
Yes.
Before you can volunteer, they want you to go through a training, which I think would be awesome.
Right.
And then I think you can decide like how much time that you can give and that kind of thing. And then as far as care doula, I'm telling you, I just got a hold of the best in Texas. It was an interesting journey. It's because like I kept wanting to do this. And then finally I found somebody and she's got a school in Austin. She's been doing this for 20 years. She was way ahead of the curve, man. And so she's got a tremendous amount of experience and a lovely, funny, bright, and just very resourceful woman. And she's in Austin, and she's now got her trainings online because of COVID. So if you would ever be interested, Caitlin, in talking to Deanna or getting some more information about her school, which is Care Doula, that is a trademark name from her. She was the very first doula, care doula, end-of-life doula that got recognized in the United States. So she's somebody to be connected to. So yeah, if you would.
Thank you. Care doula?
Yeah.
Was it Care doula? Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out. Thank you.
And just Care Doula, and I'll put her name in the chat. She'll come up.
And
Thank you.
Caitlin, there's also a recommendation for a book called The Beauty of What Remains by not by Terry Garth, but Terry Garth put the recommendation in the chat. You probably see that. That would be great.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for
it.
Oh, thanks for asking that.
Yeah, another book is Dying Well.
Okay.
And I don't remember the author off right now.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Diane.
So, yes, this is a wonderful conversation, and thank you very much for leading it. My mother passed last year, and this age of the COVID, it was when nobody could visit, and it was just a whole different layer of trauma involved. But I wanted to say, when you choose the hospice, if you have a specific, or if the loved one has a specific need, be sure that that need can be answered. Because my mother had fluid in the chest cavity and she had to be drained. And so I dealt with the salesperson of hospice, and they were sure everything can be taken care of, everything's fine. And then when the nurse got there the first day, she knew nothing about my conversation about my mother's need and didn't have the equipment. And so, to make a long story short, just be sure that whatever specific need, if it's not just general, if they have a specific need, that the hospice can meet that need.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate, the reason I also emphasized the competition is that you're in charge. The family is in charge of getting the kind of care they want and need, and that they can communicate with somebody that that they feel supported by. It's for the whole family system. And that's really necessary. And if they're not meeting it, and you give your complaints and they don't address them, fire them and get somebody else who can. Because I know that's not something you want to have to do, especially when you're going through so much. but it is your right to do that, and get other family members involved to help you do that if you need to assess that. You have another point, Diane?
But usually this stuff happens so quickly.
Yeah.
You don't have time to do a lot of research. So start early. You know, when you know you're going down that path, start looking then. But it's a whole
Right.
learning curve.
Yeah.
We don't know a whole lot about this until we're in the hospital and they're telling us, you know, and then
Right.
usually, in my case, the caregivers, she was in a nursing facility, and those people sort of chose the hospice because I didn't know, you know, so, and it happened so quickly. So anyway, just maybe start preparing if you think you're going to have that need.
It's true. And also, Diane, they really have to get your choice. It is your choice for one. There shouldn't be saying, well, this is the one we refer to. They don't get to do that either, to my knowledge. That's not how it should work. They may have gotten your approval because of the way they presented it to you. And of course, you're not going to argue, and you didn't have a better idea. So, it's like telling me where they're going to get the wheelchairs from when they discharge me. I don't care where you get it from. I'll take the wheelchair you give me. Right. So it's really important, though, like you say, to be thinking about that. And truly, we should pick our hospice, I mean, we should really choose one and let our family members know this is a hospice that I would like to have care from if I ever should need it, if that should ever occur. And that could really go a long way in support, So thank you for bringing that up for us. Candace.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
before you
Monica.
go on, I would just like to add that just for educational purposes, because I really am introducing the whole thing about having a doula, that would be exactly what a doula would help a family with.
Oh,
Man, talk about having resources and knowing how to juggle all that and getting you in touch with people. That's such a tremendous support for family, because you're right, Diane. It is like that stuff is happening fast.
mhm.
And whatever doula that you would work with, that person would have resources and be able to handle a lot of that for you. Just to put that out there, so you understand, everybody understands a little more about really the value of it.
Right. Candace, welcome.
Thank you. It's interesting to listen to all of this. And my question, I don't know because I'm a little bit ahead of both of you guys with my loved one, but maybe you can give me some insight. I have a younger sister who's been the blackest black sheep of the family her whole life. And it has been a constant challenge of one problem after another, primarily related to addiction. She and I have been the only family member who has ever been there for her. And I just realized the other day, for everything I've done over her lifetime, it never made a whit of difference. But anyway, I was always the one there. Now I'm living overseas. I'm back in Houston for 2 months. I came back in part because in November, she fell and broke her hip and nearly died in the surgery afterwards.
Mhm.
She is still bedridden. And she doesn't live in Houston. She lives in Corpus. We have been blessed by a caregiver who, through the state, Medicaid is allotted 25 hours a week to come care for my sister, who cannot get out of the bed, who cannot get herself to the bathroom. And so this young woman spends a lot of time on her own, not being paid, because she really cares about my sister. But she is reaching burnout. My sister is increasingly demanding with her. I went down there and spent almost a week just to give her caregiver a break. But my sister is 6 feet tall and weighs about over 200 pounds. I'm 5 feet 4.5 and weigh 118 pounds. I could do nothing to help her. I could barely roll her over to change her adult diaper. So I'm really in this dilemma of what to do. I fear that this young woman is going to get burnout and walk out on her. putting my sister in an assisted living facility, which is what I just told her this morning is going to be our only choice. It's not something she wants to do, but I'm concerned also because she's so isolated and her apartment is on the 8th floor of a building without any kind of fire suppression system. And if there were ever a fire, she's dead, period. So I guess I'm not even sure maybe I'm just venting, but I guess my question would be, is there any way to supplement her, to give her caregiver a break? I can't, I have no interest, honestly, in moving to Corpus Christi. I hate to be selfish, but for the first time in my life living where I am, I'm happy, you know? And I don't want to abandon her. No other family member will help.
Right. So Candace, I think you're absolutely right. What your sister really needs is she needs more care than can be given in her apartment or where she is. It's anything that you would do to shore up this one person who's giving care to her in her home is going to break down, and all she needs to do is get pneumonia or, get some other kind of, situation that would put her in the hospital. She would not recover enough to be able to go back home. So it really feels like she might very well be, and you're already concerned about her safety. It really feels like the right thing at this point is she does need to move into a place where there's more care. There will be other people around her. There will be more eyes on her. There will be mechanisms in place to keep her safe and to help her move around and get what she needs. And there'll be more social opportunities than there are right now.
Yeah.
So she would have a better quality of life in every way. And that, I mean, what your limits are, what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Knowing that, just be honest with her and tell her what is really what you would be willing to help her get to would be some sort of nursing care of some kind. If she doesn't need it now, she will need it soon.
Thanks. One question you might know, one of the issues, of course, is Medicaid. And I understand that not all assisted living facilities, I'm assuming, or nursing care are Medicaid, accept Medicaid. And some of the ones that accept, I mean, we've all seen or heard what's happened in some of these facilities because of COVID. Is there any good resource that gives you rankings or ratings for these kind of facilities to help sort out? And particularly when you're in a small area like Corpus Christi, I can't imagine that there's a long list of them anyway.
Right. I'm not aware of the resource, but you know what? You could actually go online and ask that, how to rate nursing facilities and narrow it down to Corpus Christi and see if you can't find the ratings. I mean, healthcare is healthcare in general is pretty competitive. And so putting those quality indicators out there and satisfaction, patient and client satisfaction kinds of things are really are accessible and should be able to find that.
Right.
If anybody else has anything, if you would put it into the chat for a resource for Candace or for anyone who might need that. Boys and girls, we are right up to the time we said we would be closing. I see there are more hands. I'm so grateful for you all being here, but I feel that we probably should close. I want to thank Monica Mullen for being on this call and introducing the world to care doulaship, and she's a great example of it, and you can sense her heart. And wouldn't you love, Monica, to be by your bedside or by the bedside of your loved one, escorting them, walking the last mile with them. And just know that just know that there are more resources available. And if you have any questions, you can get in touch with me. I'll put my email, I can do that right now, in here. And if I don't know, I will try to refer you to some place or someone who does. That's me, Tudor at unityhouston.org. I'm so grateful for all of you being with us. And Monica, thank you for being here. Would you like to say something before we close?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karen, for putting this together. It's been wonderful. I love being with all of you and being in these conversations. I think it just helps all of us. And there's so much more. I think that we could talk even longer, but
right.
It's such an honor. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you, Karen.
And like I said, we'll have this recording. We'll find a place, we think, on the website, I hope, that we can post it so that it could be available. But thank you again for all of you being here. And oh, Judy also put something in there that just wanted to read this out loud. Social workers can help with finding services for your sister, a county health department. She says, I live in New Jersey, so I'm not familiar with what's available in Texas, but I do know that the Medicaid limits and choices do kind of limit things, but please, it's not yours to do. She just wants you to know, Candace, that like I said, you already know what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and make peace with that and offer that to your sister. And you care about her safety. You care about what she needs next. And she'll either do it or she won't. But my guess is that she'll accept your help. So we love you all. Thank you so much for being here. And
Bye-bye.
let you all go for today. Thank you.